Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining today. I'm very excited to be here. My name is Ruben Nazario. I'm Vice President of Digital Shopping Innovation with Behaviorally. And today I'm going to talk to you about how we are using AI to optimize e-commerce images to drive sales for brands. So we've been partnering with Clarifai to use cutting-edge AI tools to help brands in e-commerce. So the next few slides, we'll talk about how we've been doing that. So before we go into it, just want to give a little bit of an introduction to our company Behaviorally, as I realize many of you might not be familiar with us. So we are the expert in visual asset insights. We've been helping CPG brands for 50 years, providing insights for their packaging designs, point of sale materials, and most recently e-commerce that they can then take and produce very strong designs, whether it's packaging or point of sale, as I mentioned. But today we're really focusing on e-commerce. And as you all know, e-commerce has exploded over the past couple of years, accelerated with the pandemic. But what's truly remarkable is that amount or that velocity of the growth. So in 2024, it's expected that retail sales, global e-commerce retail sales, will double the numbers from pre-pandemic. So in just a matter of a couple of years, e-commerce sales will have doubled, which is amazing. So because of this, of course, there's a lot of interest in e-commerce, and brands are pushing and investing a lot in this realm. So earlier this year, we had a conversation with a few of our clients and their e-commerce teams to really get an understanding of what it was to, a day in the life of e-commerce, right, in CPG manufacturer world, and really to get an understanding of what were the issues, the pain points, the challenges that these teams face to face. So what was really remarkable was that in all our conversations, we kept hearing the same themes, recurring themes over and over. And actually, the next few slides in this presentation will focus on what are some of those key themes. We created a digital booklet that summarizes these 10 key pain points. Just because they were so recurring, we thought it would be good to put together a document to share with everyone. If you want to check out the digital booklet, it's on our website, behaviorally.com. Highly recommend it. But over the next few slides, I'm going to cover some of the key highlights with what we learned about the key pain points that e-commerce teams were facing, and how that led us to create an AI-powered tool, along with Clarifai, to build a solution for them. So the first key pain point that we kept hearing over and over was how retailers make all the rules, right? Retailers like Amazon and Walmart, they have policies, product listing guidelines, all this content guidelines that brands need to follow to the T. It's really important for brands and sellers to follow these. Otherwise, they risk becoming delisted. And if any of their products are delisted, that can result in thousands, if not millions, of dollars lost in sales. So it's really, really important for brands to make sure that they are compliant with all these rules and regulations. But it can be challenging. There are content issues all the time. On average, there are over 600 content issues on a daily basis for these manufacturer type companies. And what's especially harder is that content requirements are constantly changing. So for example, Amazon in 2020 had on average a change every 3 days. So it's really hard, as you can imagine, to remain compliant if the goalposts are constantly changing. And it is especially harder when you're dealing with so many different SKUs. So a lot of these brands have hundreds, sometimes even thousands of SKUs. And they need to manage each brand's content, e-commerce content, on an individual basis. As you can imagine, each brand, each SKU has its own product page or product detail page. When you click on, on Amazon, the product page, you can find images, you can find titles, bullet points, descriptions. All that needs to be managed. And a lot of the time is spent focusing on making sure that whatever is in there is correct, right? The description matches the correct product, and it doesn't belong somewhere else. So as you can imagine, it's a lot. But it is really important to make sure that content is compliant and correct, because those brands that do spend a lot of effort and time managing their content see on average higher sales lifts. So on average, they see 45 to 58% sales lifts whenever they improve content. So it's really important to stay on top of this. However, what we found when speaking with e-commerce teams was that a lot of the attention was really focused on, again, these two areas of compliance and correct, making sure that descriptions might match the right product, but not necessarily on making sure whether content, especially images, were optimized to really engage shoppers and help those images be a vehicle for driving sales. Most of the efforts are focused really on text, and most of the platforms that they use on a daily basis really manage all the text, whether it's product descriptions or bullet points or information like that. Text is really an area that is underserved, and it's really a shame because of how we shop or how we think. Most of our cognition is visual. 90% of how we think is visual. Images are processed 60,000 times faster than text. So images are very, very important. In fact, our brains are so hardwired to processing images, that even when we see incomplete information, our brains are able to fill in the gaps and cause us to act based on the information we're receiving. So this slide shows an example from an out-of-home campaign that McDonald's ran in Puerto Rico. Essentially blurred billboards that they showed all throughout the island, and it worked really well. Again, people's brains filled the gap, and it caused people to go to the restaurants. It drove action. So it's just a very clear example showing how powerful our image processing is, right? And this is no different in e-commerce. Time and again, our research as well as industry research has shown that images are the most important elements in product pages. They are the elements that shoppers engage with the most. When looking at all the details, whether it's descriptions on the page, bullet points, it's really the images that command the most attention. I showed in the previous slide an example of a blurred image, which is enough to provide a general idea. But in e-commerce, really, in order to really win, to drive sales, brands need to have images that are very engaging, very clear, very intuitive, very, that generate excitement. And those brands that have the best images in e-commerce can really win, can really drive sales. Now, this is all very important. So why are e-commerce teams not spending as much effort or time in improving their e-commerce images, right? I mentioned earlier that most of the attention is focused on text. Well, the reason is that right now, in order for e-commerce teams to improve and optimize their images, they need to run A/B tests that don't really match their workflows. They usually take long, and they can be very limiting. So A/B tests come in the form, you can run them directly with retailers, or you can run them through third parties, but both are a little bit limiting. So for example, on Amazon, you can run an A/B test, but you can only do it on a few SKUs, not all your SKUs. And the frequency, the period can be very long, can be 10, 12 weeks. And in e-commerce, decisions need to happen, in hours, or a day, right? Not weeks. Definitely too slow. On top of that, if you're running a live A/B test, if something goes wrong, you're actually selling product, right? So it can affect your sales. So essentially, there's a lot of limiting factors, cost, speed, risks that prevent teams to really doing a lot of this A/B testing and making sure that their images are optimized. And this is, in speaking with our clients and with their ecom teams, this is really how we identified that there was an unmet need for them that we could help them address. So basically, that was the impetus for creating our Flash.pdp platform. It uses AI-powered technology provided by Clarifai And what we do is we monitor all the images that you can find in e-commerce product pages. The product pages are also known as product detail pages, or PDPs. And basically, all those images are run through the AI model. And whenever there is a deficient image, we flag that for brands, and we provide them recommendations and diagnostics, showing them how they can improve their images so they can always have, top performing content in their product pages. So I'll show you what this looks like in a second, but just want to talk a little bit about how it works. First, there are three components that are really driving this predictive AI. Number one, computer vision or image recognition, and I'll talk about that in detail in the next slide. Number two, having data. So as I mentioned earlier, behaviorally has been around for 50 years. So we've been conducting consumer research for that long. We've been gathering data. We have a very large and growing image database. And in that image database, each image has a corresponding set of data points across KPIs, whether it be taste, quality, perceptions, you name it. And then all those data points are gathered in a way that fits with our behavioral science framework, where essentially we're making sure that we capture behaviors in their truest form. So that's really the building blocks for our predictive AI. But I want to take double click and take a closer look and walk you through computer vision and image recognition to really explain the model and how we worked with Clarifai to develop a model that could interpret e-commerce images, and based on the visual characteristics, make predictions across KPIs. So to explain this, I'm going to use an analogy with tomatoes. So say I wanted to create a model that predicts how good a tomato will taste based on its color. So how would I go and build that? Well, the first thing I need to do is train a computer to see the tomatoes in a similar way as a human would, right? So it needs to see and interpret colors like a human would. So I need to take all those tomatoes and I need to translate color into a computer language. So how do I do that? Well, I line up the tomatoes along a color spectrum, and there's a numerical value associated to each color in the color spectrum. So that way, when the computer sees green, there's a specific numerical value. When it sees red or yellow, there's a different numerical value. So in that way, the computer can interpret color, can process color in a similar way than humans. So that's step number one, right? Getting the tomatoes, right? Collection of fresh tomatoes, classifying by color. But remember, I want to train the model to predict how tasty the tomato will be based on the color. So what I need to do next is I need to taste all the tomatoes. I'm going to taste them one by one. And for each of the tomatoes, I'm going to give it a taste rating. So I'm going to taste the red tomato. Oh, it tastes great. Give it a rating. Taste of the yellow tomato. It tastes okay. Taste of the green tomato. It doesn't taste good at all. So after I taste all these tomatoes and record their taste ratings and give it to the AI model, right? The AI model starts detecting patterns. It starts seeing that, hey, you know what? The redder the tomatoes, the tastier they are. The greener they are, the lower the taste scores will be. So now that it has detected this pattern, it can infer future results just based on the colors. So if I buy a new tomato, right, and it's a bright red tomato, the AI is going to predict, hey, this is going to be a tasty tomato. But if I get a green one, it's going to predict a low taste score for that tomato. So this is just a very simplistic example or analogy of how the models have been trained for e-commerce images, but it's a good explanation. Basically, for our e-commerce images, the AI detects all the visual characteristics, whether it's colors, size, font styles, shapes, etc. And based on the patterns it detects from all those visual characteristics, it ties it to patterns in data. And therefore, it can make predictions across KPIs, right? So now that you know how the AI works, right, I'm going to show you the output of this tool that we developed for brands, for e-commerce. So again, I mentioned earlier, the tool essentially monitors images in e-commerce product pages and flags whenever there are deficient images. So in this example output that I'm showing, we have monitored the images for 94 SKUs on Amazon, right? So of all those 94 SKUs, there were 12 images that were deficient. So that's what this page is flagging right now. It shows the SKUs and it shows which images are deficient. So that's the first part. Now for each image that's deficient, we'll provide diagnostics showing exactly where the image is deficient. So for example, for this SKU, Smart Sweets Variety Pack, the from the manufacturer image has a deficiency in personal relevance. So you'll see all the KPIs where our AI model is making predictions. And the scale you see here from red all the way to green is the prediction that the AI is making. If it's a red all the way to the left, it's a bottom performer. If it's all the way to the right, a dark green color, it's a top performer. And everything in between is an average performer. So for all these KPIs that the model has evaluated this image, it detected that on personal relevance, this image is deficient. Now, because this image is deficient on personal relevance, we have provided a certain set of actions and recommendations for optimizing this image. So the idea being that the e-commerce team can hand these recommendations to their content management folks or their design folks so they can optimize the image really quickly and launch them again into the e-commerce platforms. That way they can have top performing images all the time, right? This is something that they can do on a continual basis so they can make sure that they always have strong performing images. Great. So if there's one thing that I want you to take away from this presentation today is that with AI tools and with partnership with Clarifai, we've been able to help brands not have to sacrifice not focusing on or not having strong e-commerce images and only focus on compliance and correct content. They can do both, right? They can make sure that they always have top performing images in their e-commerce pages in a manner that really fits their workflows very seamlessly, right? E-commerce needs to happen very, very quickly. So with AI tools, we can ensure that brands are able to constantly update and optimize their images very, very quickly as well. Great. So thank you very much. I hope you found that interesting. And yeah, if you want to learn more, feel free to reach out via email or in social media. Thank you so much.